Welcome back. Free Radical Radio right here on the Big 810 AM, WEUS Orlando. Of course, you can find us online, freeradicalorlando.com, on the Liberty Radio Network, Liberty Works Radio Network, Sons of Liberty Radio Network, and all types of other ways you can get a hold of the show and check us out. And we do appreciate it. Now we have on the line our very special guest, certainly I'd say one of the biggest names you've ever had on the show, in my opinion, possibly the next president of the United States, former governor and, Libertarian candidate for president, the one and only Gary Johnson. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, man, great to be on. And here in Orlando, getting to take part in the debates tomorrow afternoon at the Libertarian convention here in Florida.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah, we're excited about that. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is, you are now running as a Libertarian, but you were previously running as a Republican, and you really got ignored. The media didn't want to talk about you. They didn't want to let you into the debates. They left you off, straw poll, polls and stuff like that. What happened? Why do you think that they ignored you like that and propped up somebody like, say, Herman Cain, who at the time, you were certainly more famous than Herman Cain at the beginning of this race? Why did they ignore you, do you think?
Well, I don't have an explanation for it, but it did happen. I was excluded from polls that they were using to determine who was in the debate.
Right.
Well, that's completely exclusionary by any measurement whatsoever. You can't be in the debate if you're not an option in the poll. CNN does a poll every 2 weeks, a national poll. 5 months ago, my name appeared in their first national poll. We thought, okay, wow, this is all of this is now in the past, because in that poll I polled at 2%, which at that time tied me with Cain and put me ahead of Santorum and put me ahead of Huntsman.
Mm-hmm.
From that, I can't make this up, by the way. From that poll, my name has been excluded from every single CNN poll since then.
Right. And it's completely outrageous how they were saying then that, he didn't get a certain amount in the polls, therefore we're not including him in the debates. Well, they didn't put you on the polls. I mean, it's just outrageous.
Right. It was outrageous. Exactly.
Yeah, and I was really disappointed because, I wanted to see somebody, I'm a registered Republican. I voted for Ron Paul. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. But, I wanted to, there's sort of this thing out there that the Fox News and these other people put out there that, Ron Paul's crazy, and, you don't have that kind of, baggage, if you will. And I really thought that you had a great chance within the Republican Party to talk some sanity into these people, and I was really disappointed to see them exclude you like that. So you're running as a Libertarian, and you're doing a Libertarian presidential debate here in Orlando tomorrow. Can you tell us a little bit about that, if you would? And also, among the people that are running against you as Libertarians, is there anybody that sticks out that's your greatest competition, or is this sort of a shoo-in for you? I mean, as I understand it, you're certainly the most qualified person in the race.
Well, it's not a shoo-in by any means, and I really look forward to the debate and the discussion. And I'd just like to say that I think that for the most part, I am talking about the same message as Ron Paul is talking about. We do have some differences, but I don't think Ron Paul is going to be successful getting the Republican nomination, and that's where this freedom and liberty torch snuffs out, in my opinion, unless somebody carries it forward. And you know what? I think there are thousands of people that would, given the opportunity that I have, would be the same spokesperson that I am. So I'm just trying to be the best messenger possible. And back to those debates. You know what? If you got two people up there on stage talking about the same thing, as a human being, communications 101, when you hear things from the same thing from different sources, you hear it in different ways, and you get to understand it a little bit better. It resonates a little clearer. So, two on stage, that would have been terrific, and I'm talking about Ron Paul and myself, at the point when it becomes everybody on stage talking about a freedom and liberty agenda, and in this case, balancing the federal budget. Let's avoid the inevitable monetary collapse that we're in for, given the fact that we're printing all the money that we're printing. If all 9 candidates on stage were talking that way, we would have the change that we need to have happen now.
Right, and I really look forward to that debate. It should be really a breath of fresh air versus these days watching the Republican debates, which I've watched most of, and it's one person up there that actually makes any sense really. Some people have some nice sound bites, but they're really full of it at the end of the day. So I guess the important thing here for our listeners that may not be familiar with the Libertarian Party and the ideas of libertarianism, let's look at some of your stances on different issues, such as you mentioned foreign policy. What's your stance on foreign policy? What should the role be of the U.S. military?
Well, we should be vigilant to any military threat. We should provide ourselves with a strong national defense. It's one of the obligations of government, but one of the promises that I'm making running for President of the United States is to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That would be for fiscal year 2014. But here's the premise. We can provide ourselves with a strong national defense and still cut military spending by 43%. Before anybody falls off their chair, 43% reduction in military spending only goes back to the year 2003. Mm-hmm. And the notion is strong national defense, not offense, not nation building, which is what we've been engaged in. So we need to get out of the conflicts that we're currently involved in. We need to understand that any conflict that we become involved in has to have at its base a military threat against the United States. We need to understand that Iran may be a military threat in the future, and we should be vigilant to that military threat. But we need to understand that that is an unintended consequence of us taking out Iraq. We take out Iraq, we take out Saddam Hussein. Look, that was Iran's concern every single day. What might they do to us? We take them out, now we have them to deal with. So it's just one unintended consequence after another. I don't think that should be our foreign policy. These are other countries that can determine their fate. There's nothing in the United States Constitution that says that because we don't like a foreign dictator, a la Gaddafi, that we should take out that foreign dictator. There's just nothing in the Constitution that says that that's what we're about.
So, is it? Do you think it's ever proper to engage in they've sort of sold us this idea of like preemptive attacks, basically preemptive attacks on states. Let's attack them before they're able to supposedly attack us. Is that ever called for? I don't
think it is ever called for. We've always been the country that's been looked at as standing up against the bully, and I think we're now perceived as the bully, and it's not just a perception. This notion of first strike has never been what we've been about.
Right. I agree with you. Now, let's go to sort of a hot domestic issue here. The war on drugs it's pretty controversial these days, especially things like marijuana and medical marijuana. Where do you stand on the war on drugs?
Well, I think that we should legalize marijuana, control it, regulate it, tax it. Let's understand that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that's not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that ought to be the focus. Border violence. Look, this is a prohibition phenomenon. 40,000 deaths south of the border over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. If we can't connect the dots between these disputes being played out with guns rather than the courts, I don't know if we're ever going to make that connection. And didn't that happen with the prohibition of alcohol,
exactly
where
right.
disputes were being played out on the streets with machine guns?
Exactly. They learned their lesson
in the court.
Yeah, they learned the lesson with alcohol prohibition, Gary. Why can't they figure it out when it comes to other drugs prohibition? It's the same exact concept, same exact thing.
Well, and right now, 50% of Americans support legalizing marijuana. This is an issue that when people talk about it, the issue advances. So it's now a topic of dinner conversation all across the country where it hasn't been before. That's a good thing. So as part of this presidential campaign, getting more of those discussions to occur is only for the better of the reform that needs to take place. Legalize marijuana. When it comes to all the other drugs, fundamentally, let's look at the drug problem as a health issue, which it is, as opposed to a criminal justice issue.
Right, absolutely. But you think that all sort of starts with legalizing marijuana, and then sort of once we see that working, maybe there's some room to be more lenient with other things and treat the underlying health issue as opposed to treating these people like criminals because they're addicted to a substance, is what you're saying?
Well, you nailed it right on the head. We start with legalizing marijuana. Gosh, the world doesn't end. In fact, the world is a better place to live because police are actually going out and enforcing real crime as opposed to victimless, nonviolent drug offenses.
All right, right on. Okay, we got to go to a quick break here, Gary. Stick with us. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. This is Free Radical Radio. Welcome back. This is the 100th episode of Free Radical Radio, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining with us, whether you've been here for all 100 episodes or are a new listener. We do very much appreciate you, and you can give us a call if you have questions for Governor and presidential candidate Gary Johnson, who's on the line with us, 407-774-0810. Of course, Governor Johnson is running as a Libertarian candidate, and let me ask you, Governor, do you think that this is the year that the Libertarian candidate could actually win and sort of shatter this two-party system?
Well, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think that that was a possibility, and most importantly, it is about a message, and like I say, I don't see Ron Paul winning the Republican nomination. So this is continuing an agenda and a message that really identifies what the problems are in this country, the solutions that go along with the problems. And of course, I'm making the pitch that I've got the resume to suggest that I will actually doggedly pursue the agenda that it takes to fix what is wrong. So here's the exciting part for me is I'm not the Libertarian nominee. There are 10 Libertarian candidates running for the nomination, but the Libertarian nominee will be on the ballot in all 50 states and potentially poll at a high enough number, 15%, to be on the national debate stage with Obama and believing that the Republican candidate will be Romney. So that's and given the discontent right now in this country and the need for change and the fact that both parties are just big government Republican, big government Democrat, I think there is a real opportunity here to potentially make a difference, change the world a little bit.
Right. That's extremely important because, certainly I'm not going to have any interest in watching a debate between, Romney and Obama. I mean, that's just a waste of my time. But if you're in there, it's someone like you bringing in real issues onto the stage and letting the people of America learn about, liberty and what does it actually mean to be free and to have a foreign policy that makes sense and laws that actually make sense. That's extremely exciting, and win or lose, if you're up on that stage, that's a huge moment for the awakening of the American people, I feel. So let me ask you this, Governor.
Well, I think the Libertarian Party takes the best from both parties. Look, we need to slash welfare spending, but we need to slash warfare spending. We need to respect gun rights. We need to respect gay rights, and I think there's a huge discontent with Democrats when it comes to war, when it comes to marriage equality, when it comes to choices that we should be making, nobody else should be making. And then on the Republican side, there's nothing to suggest that Republicans are going to actually balance the federal budget. I only have one issue with Mitt Romney. Really, very personable guy. But I have no idea where he stands on any issues.
Ain't that the truth? The man has flip-flopped on virtually every issue in existence. That's a good point. So let me ask you this, Governor. Assuming that Ron Paul does not get the Republican nomination, how many of his supporters do you expect to come over and become your supporters for the general election?
Well, I'll leave that to Ron Paul supporters, but being a Ron Paul supporter, Ron Paul asked me to endorse him in 2008, which I readily did, and when I dropped out of the Republican primary, I asked everyone that supported me to go on and support Ron Paul. I have to believe, first and foremost, that me being one of them, Ron Paul supporters are smart. And so, who are they going to vote for? I'll leave that to Ron Paul supporters. I'll leave that completely to Ron Paul supporters.
Fair enough. So,
as a Ron Paul supporter, I will gladly be voting for Gary Johnson if Ron Paul does not get the nomination.
Of course, and I will be doing the same,
choice.
and I would certainly encourage all our listeners to do the same as well. It's a real easy choice. It's a cinch. I mean, what are you going to vote for, Obama or Obama light, really? I mean, that's my thought. So, we've been talking about Ron Paul a bit, and you mentioned there are some places where you do differ. Where do you differ from Ron Paul as far as your stances?
Well, I support a woman's right to choose. I do not want to build a fence across the border. I think that would be a waste of time. I do support marriage equality, and I know this is a real... when it comes to Israel, I do think that Israel is an important ally. I think that we have and believe me, I don't think Ron Paul deviates from the notion of us having a strong national defense, but... I think we have that strong national defense, and we do it, and we cut military spending by 43%, believing the biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we continue to spend more money than what we take in. I am opposed to foreign aid, but I think it's important to distinguish between foreign aid and military alliances. Military alliances being the key for us to be able to reduce our military expenditures by 43%. And allow other countries to share in this vigil against what I think is a real threat from terrorism. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, in my lifetime, I don't know if there have been any military interventions on our part that have been justified. This is my view, and I'm not doing this in a box, but you know what? We absolutely cannot continue to have all of these wars going on. We can't have any of them going on. So
right.
Let's extricate ourselves from that not being a difference from Ron Paul.
Right. What about the Federal Reserve, which is one of Ron Paul's hot issues? Do you have a stance on the Fed? Should we end them, audit them, both?
Yeah, I would end the Federal Reserve if given the opportunity, but I also want to point out that ending the Federal Reserve really brings about transparency. And for those things that we do need the Federal Reserve for, those central banking activities that are essential, they could be picked up by the regional banks. What we need to do is stop printing money. And to stop printing money, we need to balance the federal budget. I am proposing to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I'm promising to veto expenses that exceed revenue. I suggest that spending in the scenario that I just pointed out will be lower than any other scenario that you can possibly come up with. And then also I'm promising to advocate on the part of throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with the fair tax, which I really think, for those listening, check out fairtax.org. I really think it reboots the American economy for the next 100 years. It makes American goods and services 23% more competitive, so it's the answer when it comes to our exports. It replaces the income tax. It replaces corporate tax. No more withholdings, with a 23% consumption tax, which ends up to be cost neutral over a very short amount of time, because what you're doing is you're taking embedded, non-transparent taxes, you're changing that over to a very transparent tax. So you do away with the embedded 23% tax that's in there. You replace it with a transparent 23% tax, revenue neutral. The can of Coke won't need to sell for $1 anymore for Coke to make the same amount of profit. It can sell for 80 cents to make the same amount of profit.
I am with you.
And it's the answer when it comes to jobs. In a zero corporate tax rate environment, if the private sector doesn't create tens of millions of jobs, hey, what's it going to take to create tens of millions of jobs?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gary Johnson. I do appreciate it. We're out of time here, but GaryJohnson2012.com is the website. The Libertarian candidate running for president here in Orlando for a debate tomorrow evening. Make sure to check that out, GaryJohnson2012.com. Thank you so much, Governor. We very much appreciate you spending time with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.
All right, take care. Free Radical Radio. Check us out online, freeradicalorlando.com. We'll see you next week.